Good day. Welcome to the enclosure.ca. Today I'm just going to discuss a little bit about fungi that stains attics in the Pacific Northwest. So we are in my partially completed dwelling, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of staining to generally the heartwood portion of the plywood, which is why you'll see staining there. But if we go, say, over to here, you'll see that it's just in the heartwood portion. And that's because, sorry, it's not heartwood, sapwood. And that's because the sap provides a better food source and starts the contamination process easier than the heartwood. So you'll see we're in a partially completed dwelling. We have 100% open eaves, so we have massive amounts of ventilation, as you'll see as I pan around here. There is still a myth within the building industry that ventilation prevents attic mildew. And it may be the cause in some areas, but in the Pacific Northwest you can have a perfectly vented roof assembly that has more than the required code volume of venting, and you'll see here I've got tons. And I also do not have a heat source or a moisture source within the dwelling. We're still in rough construction. No electrical, no plumbing. It's basically wide open. Yet you still end up with staining on the underside of the roof deck. And you can see what we're looking at now is the south exposure, and it's not too bad. But if we walk over to the north exposure, you'll see that it gets quite a bit worse. And for a long time, the mechanisms that cause this were not known. So let me back up by saying this roof never saw bulk water, never saw rain falling directly on it. The whole structure was provided protection by a 60-foot by 80-foot job site tarp. So it never got wetted from above. There was a few leaks in the tarp from time to time, but nothing major and nothing long term. This accumulation of fungi staining has all occurred due to condensation on the underside of the roof deck. And so a lot of people will wonder, well, how can that happen if there's no moisture in the house and there's no heat in the house? So there's not warm, moisture-ridden air leaking out into that quote-unquote attic and condensing on a cold surface. And it's because in the Pacific Northwest we have a phenomenon, and I believe it's in other areas too, but I believe it's the combination of humidity and temperatures that we have here that make a fairly unique situation where on cold winter nights where the humidity is fairly high, but there is no cloud cover, and the roof surface can see space, you end up with any surface that can see space can be colder than the ambient air temperature, and therefore below the dew point of the ambient air temperature. And that's what they're finding. RDH has been doing some studies, rooftop studies. They're finding that even in a wide open, sort of like carport type atmosphere, their test huts, that you can end up with condensation and fungi growing on the underside of roof decks, even though the exterior air has never reached freezing or the dew point, the surface, because it is seeing space, gets colder by 1 or 2 degrees and does see the dew point. So what I'm going to be doing today is treating this with my favorite treatment of Concrobium mold stain remover. And you can see I've done a little bit of it already here a few weeks back, and just with a tiny bit of liquid. I only had a little bit of liquid left that I just sort of spritzed it with. And you can see how much nicer that is compared to that. And that's what it used to look like. And I do have before and after pictures there too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now treat the whole underside of the ceiling. And once it's treated and dried out, then I will be permanently protecting it with Sensin blue wood solution, and I'll show you more of that later. Okay, so I'll invite you back once we've done our treatment and show you the results. So here we are a couple of hours later, and you can see the end result is quite phenomenal compared to how bad it was, and it will continue getting better over the evening. There was that really bad spot, and there's just some light staining left. So more importantly, not only is it taking away the staining, but it's also killing the mold spore, or the fungi spore. It's not necessarily mold, it's a staining fungi. And it's not bad for the roof deck because it's a staining fungi and not a rot fungi. It won't deteriorate the structural capacity of the plywood, but it's not necessarily healthy if you have a pressurization of the attic space due to winds. In a normal house, that could be pushed into the house. Of course, I'm not going to have a normal house. This is going to be basically airtight. So the likelihood of that happening is very slim. But anyway, you still don't want it around. So you can see some areas over there that will need some additional treatment. Something that I did on the second batch, which is mainly over on this side of the roof, is I pre-wetted the wood with a hose, which is part of the instructions, which I failed to do on the first side. And you can see much better results. And that's because it stays wet for a much longer period. And so the solution stays active for a much longer period. So there's still a little bit here. But compared to how it started, this is quite phenomenal. And I can show you up in there as well. It's done quite well. So I'm going to have to regroup and get some more solution because I only bought two kits. I put it on, I never talked about that. I put it on with an air sprayer, and I'll just go show you what I mean by that. I had a little hand pump garden sprayer that took forever and put on way too much. So this is a little pneumatic spray head, and then it gets connected to a pot that you put the liquid in, and then this seals down onto the pot lid, and it allows for a much better control of the spray pattern. You can get a nice fat wide fan blade, and you can control how much liquid is being introduced into the airstream as well. So it did much better. This side was really bad, and so it's gonna need a second coating. That part up there, straight up, that's where I ran out. So that hasn't been treated. But if you want to get an idea for before and after, This I just finished spraying. This I did not spray, so later on I'm going to show you the difference between those two, and probably just a photo on the blog entry. Okay, so thanks for visiting. I will do another follow-up once I've done the additional spraying and blue wood. This side hasn't been treated at all yet, so it had a lighter coverage, but I'm out of solution. Okay, thanks for visiting. This short video addendum contains a time-lapse of images taken every 4 minutes. As you can see, even within the first few images, much of the cleaning has already taken place. By the end of the 4-hour span, the staining is gone and the plywood is pristine.